Hey, what's up everybody? It's Andrew with We Run Guns, and today I have a video that I've been working on for a while. I'm titling it A Strategy for Long-Term Gun Rights. So if you want to jump to a particular section, you're more than welcome to. I'll leave a table of contents down below. So the objective of this video is to explore peaceful strategies for reclaiming legal gun rights for responsible law-abiding citizens. So I'm going to preface this video by saying that I believe that responsible law-abiding citizens should have the legal right to own firearms. In the United States, this right has been steadily eroding since 1934 with the passing of the National Firearms Act. Since then, further restrictions over the preceding decades have managed to chip away at this right. This restricting legislation has fluctuated in intensity throughout the local, state, and federal levels with no significant improvement to public safety. These laws continue to burden responsible law-abiding gun owners, in many cases calling for seizure or destruction of private property with no intention of reimbursement and no due process. The political term compromise, quote unquote, used in the context of the gun debate typically means the law-abiding gun owner should give up more rights in exchange for nothing. These compromises include higher fees, excessive wait times, more gun-free zones, outlawing cosmetic features of firearms, continuously reducing legal capacity of magazines, and the constant threat of confiscation. So far, the implementation of these laws has led to no significant increase in public safety. Introduction. For close to 100 years, gun rights in the United States have resembled a ship taking on water. Despite our best effort to keep the ship afloat, there is a clear trend in the rising water level on board. Solving this long-term issue requires tact, collaboration, and a variety of strategies working synergistically to achieve a common goal. There are two major factors that influence gun rights in the United States: the actions of lawmakers and general public opinion. Exploring the relationship of these two variables may provide insight into how gun rights can move forward. Lawmakers from both political parties have been complicit in the erosion of gun rights. Generally speaking, Democrats are more openly in favor of gun control and seek to improve public safety by imposing harsher restrictions on law-abiding citizens. Republicans, on the other hand, are more complex on this issue. Assuming Republicans vote based on their honest positions, they can be subdivided into three groups: the anti-gun Republican, who in my opinion will receive a letter F grade; the common sense gun control Republican, who'd probably receive like a letter C grade on this issue; and the pro-gun Republican, who'd probably receive a letter A grade. Now, as shocking as this may sound, politicians do not routinely make decisions based on personal beliefs. They are swayed by public opinion. This is because their jobs depend on it. The primary concern of a politician is to get reelected. If there is no apparent support for a particular piece of legislation, then a politician is unlikely to support it. This is why almost 2 years of Donald Trump's NRA-backed presidency with a Republican Congress has passed zero pro-gun legislation and actually passed an anti-gun federal law. To his credit, he has appointed several pro-gun federal judges and 2 pro-gun Supreme Court justices. Within the two-party system, there are groups of voters who will always vote for a specific political party because of firm beliefs they have had reinforced over several years or generations. These voters are relatively constant and do not pose a threat to politicians. Their job security generally depends on 2 factors: voter turnout and middle-of-the-road voters. The latter may explain why pro-gun politicians may decide to compromise or sacrifice gun rights for a perceived improvement in public safety in hopes of winning over middle-of-the-road voters. This may be beneficial to the politician if he or she knows that they will be running against an anti-gun politician, like an F grade. The pro-gun voter is then forced to choose between an anti-gun politician, which is an F grade, or a common sense politician who's a C grade, while the politician has the benefit of picking up moderate voters. Now, we have seen this strategy implemented in Florida with Governor Rick Scott passing anti-gun legislation. Even though he was an A-grade candidate by the NRA and had never passed anti-gun legislation, in the heat of emotions and for his upcoming Senate race decided to pass anti-gun legislation increasing the age to 21 and prohibiting rate-increasing devices and many other things like red flag laws in the state of Florida, all in hopes of winning his Senate race by picking up moderate voters. Meanwhile, knowing that pro-gun voters are going to have to choose between him or Bill Nelson, who has a very strong anti-gun record. So now we discuss an important topic, which is election voting strategies. How should I vote? So I break it down into 2 different strategies as a pro-gun voter. So strategy number 1 is vote for the most pro-gun candidate on the ballot, even if he or she does not have a realistic chance of winning, which is basically like a protest vote. So there are some pros and cons to this strategy. So the pros to this strategy is that it sends a message to the winning candidate that the issue of gun rights is important for constituents of a given area if they know the reason behind the results, which may be unlikely. The cons to this strategy is that by not voting for the most pro-gun candidate that actually has a chance of winning, you may allow for an anti-gun F-graded candidate to win. If you allow an F-graded candidate to win by refusing to vote for a C candidate because he's a compromiser, there may be permanent damage for gun rights. Gun rights are very difficult to regain once they are lost. We've seen this for many examples in many different states and many different countries, in fact, around the world. People get used to living under gun control and it becomes the new norm. Reverting back to pro-gun legislation would seem dangerous to moderate voters and is unlikely to be politically advantageous for any legislator. The elected official who wins may not understand why so many votes went to the independent candidate who may have been an A-grade pro-gun candidate. This pro-gun candidate may attribute these high votes in independent voters to another reason and may not associate it or understand that it's because of pro-gun issues. Strategy number 2. Vote for the most pro-gun candidate who actually has a reasonable chance of winning. This ensures that an anti-gun or F-grade candidate does not defeat a common sense C-grade or higher pro-gun candidate. So there's some pros and cons to this as well. So the pros is that the most pro-gun candidate is always rewarded with a victory, potentially teaching new politicians to be more pro-gun. One avoids absolute destruction of rights from an F candidate. Also, if the public advocates for pro-gun legislation, then the C candidate may turn into a B or an A-graded candidate during his term and pass pro-gun legislation, although this requires enough perceived public opinion. And I highlight the word perceived because I'm going to get to that a little later in the video. Now, the cons to this strategy is that it may require you to vote for a common sense or a C-graded pro-gun candidate, which a lot of people are very reluctant to vote for compromisers, even though it may be the best option available to us. So the next variable I'm going to discuss is increasing voter turnout. Organize family, friends who are aligned with your views to go out to the polls. Give them a ride or explain to them the importance of voting. Remind your pro-gun friends on social media to vote and educate them on the potential consequences of not voting. Now, for middle-of-the-road voters, most debates, if you have one-on-one with these individuals, should start as emotionally based before you go to fact-based arguments. This will better communicate the message with these individuals who may be used to emotionally based arguments. If you have the opportunity, take these individuals to the range and expose them to the sport of target shooting. Emphasize responsible and safe uses of firearms. All gun owners have the potential to make the gun community look very good or very bad. Remember that any action taken by a civilian gun owner reflects on all gun owners. Emphasize the positive stories of gun owners saving themselves or others in self-defense. These stories are underreported in the media and need to be spread through social media and other methods. Now for the next issue, how do we change general public opinion? One of the major influences of our generation is social media. Pro-gun influencers need to fight to stay on platforms such as Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Google, and Twitter in order to keep gun content mainstream. This is difficult to accomplish due to corporate biases, but media is more important than ever. Legislation may need to be passed in order to preserve the First Amendment on these platforms. Now, an interesting topic I find is elected officials' perception of public opinion. And again, I highlight the word perception. This factor is just as important as changing actual public opinion. The politician only knows what the public opinion is based on polls and what is heard from their constituents. Writing letters to politicians, sending emails, writing on their social media, participating in polls, showing up to pro-gun rallies, all influences their perceived public opinion on firearms. And here I'd like to emphasize the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Now, an important concept to discuss is strength in numbers, and that's usually done through pro-gun organizations. And the first one I'm going to be discussing is the NRA. So the National Rifle Association is the largest gun rights organization in the country with over 6 million members at the timing of this video. Many people in the firearms community dislike the NRA for having a history of compromising on Second Amendment issues. While this is true, some of these actions were done to prevent even worse measures of gun control. But is this truly a practical way for lobbying for gun rights? Congress in 2017 had enough votes to pass an outright ban on rate-increasing devices, such as bump stocks. The NRA said it agreed with the ban, but suggested that it be referred to the ATF for evaluation. Now, this angered many NRA members, but ultimately allowed for enough time for emotions in the country to cool. To this day, at the timing of this video, a federal ban on bump stocks has not been passed thanks to the work of the NRA. However, this statement from the NRA did embolden individual states to ban the devices, which may or may not have been inevitable. Executives of the NRA, such as Chris Cox, claim to want the same long-term goals as many NRA members, such as repeal of many federal gun control laws, but only want to make moves when a bill has enough votes to be passed. This suggests that the NRA understands the relationship between politicians, public opinion, and the consequences of allowing a bill to go to the floor and fail. The idea of consolidating resources and goals of the gun community into a single large organization that can mobilize large amounts of people to take action in unison is a powerful force. Is it perfect? Certainly not, but they are currently the single largest voice for gun rights in the United States. However, many individuals feel as though they have compromised too far to be actually serious about achieving long-term gun rights. The next organization I'm going to discuss is GOA. So Gun Owners of America takes a hardline, no-compromise stance, and right now, at the timing of this video, has approximately 1.5 million members. This organization is more grassroots-based and does a good job of representing the gun community in the media. They also work very hard to support no-compromise candidates, which is ultimately what this cause needs. However, not having the ability to compromise may lead to less results for pro-gun legislation. The anti-gun organizations, on the other hand, use a strategy often referred to as death by 1,000 paper cuts. They inch their way toward their goal, making deals wherever they can. The GOA appears to be more all or nothing, which is attractive for raising money but may not yield as much progress. Now, the NRA and GOA are not the only gun rights organizations on the federal level. We also have Firearms Policy Coalition, FPC, and many others that do great work for the gun community. Now, very important organizations to mention here are state and local organizations. So we have many, such as Florida Carry, that I'm a part of, that fight at the state and also at the local level in order to fight against infringements against the Second Amendment. So anti-gunners have recently been going after the state level when they find that they can't fight at the federal level, and they've been succeeding. So it's very important that we have these organizations intact, and they're able to organize people on a moment's notice. They're able to get signatures. They're able to organize rallies and understand their members, maybe even better than a nationwide organization. So in talking about pro-gun organizations, I think it's important that we also acknowledge anti-gun organizations and what they've been doing, because they're very well funded and they appear to be becoming more and more effective as the years go by. These organizations work tirelessly trying to achieve political victories and sway public opinion. If they work harder or raise more money than pro-gun organizations, they will eventually have the resources to achieve their goals. Now, a takeaway message that I have from this video is that gun rights advocates should vote in unison to vote for a single candidate to maximize winning potential. If we all have the same goal in mind, then we should also use the same strategy in order to give it the best chance of actually succeeding. Another consideration, like I said, is that public opinion influences the action or inaction of politicians. Lobbying organizations are effective at the state, local, and federal level and should be supported by pro-gun members. So now I have some questions for you all. Should pro-gun advocates join the NRA? Do they compromise too much, or do they understand the complex relationship of public opinion, public emotion, and lawmaking? Question number 2. Should you vote for common sense gun control candidates like a C-grade candidate over an anti-gun candidate, which is like an F grade? Is teaching the compromising candidate a lesson by writing in a vote and giving the victory to the anti-gun candidate worth the consequences? And when I mean consequences, I'm talking about permanent damage and a paradigm shift in public opinion by being more comfortable living under anti-gun legislation, because eventually people get used to it and that's where they stay. Question number 3. What is the best strategy for uniting the gun community in seeking better legislation? We all want the same goal. One strategy may be best for reaching that goal. We need to find a consensus for what that strategy is so that we can all push it together. Question number 4. How does one sway public opinion to favor less gun control and more pro-gun legislation? Question number 5. How does one combat the major media companies who spread misinformation and pose an anti-gun agenda? How do we reduce mass shootings? As a community, we need to take action before someone else does. These events catalyze anti-gun legislation, not only in the United States, but we've seen these examples in Australia, in the UK, and many other places around the world. We know that mass shootings lead to anti-gun legislation, so we need to do something as a community to stop them before they happen. And question number 7, how do we alleviate the concerns of non-gun owners while preserving our rights? If you made it this far, I want to thank you for getting here. This is an issue that I'm very passionate about and I'm interested in further exploring. So thank you for stopping by. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and check me out for new content coming in the future. Also, check me out on Patreon. Check out my Instagram, which is @WeRunGuns, which I'm usually on, on a daily basis. So check me out there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. WRG, out.